All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Kevin Kurrs with Tessco Technologies. I am the Market Development Manager for Tessco, and want to welcome everybody to our Tessco in-building webinars overview on not only in-building amplification, DAS, but we'll also go over some of our more popular amplifier vendors that we work with. Really pleased to see the number of people on today's call and appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to join me. A little bit of background on me. I actually spent about 15, 20 years in telecom, wireless telecom. Was able to launch Cellular One Macaw back on the West Coast, and has also had the opportunity to launch T-Mobile out in a 5-state region out west as well. So about 5 years ago, I got inkling to kind of challenge myself a little bit more and move to North Carolina and began working with a company called Spotwave, who still is a partner of Tessco today, and got into the in-building amplification space. Enjoyed every moment of it. Worked with a number of different amplifier manufacturers selling direct, and got some nice experience there with the federal government, enterprise, corporate, and the military space. So I hope that my background is helpful for those of you on the call that want to learn more about this interesting industry. Would also point out that everybody is set to mute when you join the call. If you do have a question, you can raise your hand, and I'll try to get to it. What I really like to do is hold all the questions till the end so that I can, make best use of the time and get you off the call at 30 minutes, and we'll have a 10-minute Q&A session. So let's go ahead and get started. Just a quick slide introduction here with regard to in-building amplification. As many of you may be aware, there is a definite convergence of wireless and the Internet with not only public safety, wireless carrier coverage, but also with broadband point-to-point solutions where we're broadcasting networking depending on what frequencies from building to building on a campus. So we're seeing a lot of that go on, and we're seeing a lot of broadband folks trying to get into and interest into the in-building amplifier and DAS space. So just a quick overview of the agenda that we have for you today. We're going to go over an in-building backgrounder, what exactly covers this space and what some of the propagation inhibitors are. We're going to talk a little bit about our manufacturing partners, and keep the first portion of the slide deck will be on wireless solutions for the wireless carriers, and then the end we'll go into some public safety verticals, talk a little bit about what Tessco's built from an in-building campaign standpoint and how we can best support you, and then we'll move into some of the marketing and lead generation ideas that I have to share with you today. So taking a look at the in-building backgrounder, I think it's very common, and we're all experiencing the explosion of growth in the wireless smartphone handsets, whether it be BlackBerries or iPads. You're getting into a situation where more users today are using applications wirelessly in a mobile setting, and that's definitely creating the need for the carriers to ensure really good signal for their end users, whether it be outdoors, in a building, in an elevator shaft, going up a high building. There's just so many needs for really good signal. We just expect it today. I don't think we get as frustrated with voice as we do with data anymore. And then some of the public safety reasons for having good in-building signal are evidenced by some of the incidents that we've had with school shootings, as well as other incidents that happen in a public environment where we're trying to protect our public safety customers that go into a building. And from a business perspective, if you own a building, you just can no longer be a business owner that's poor productivity due to your workers not being able to access voice and data. So spotty coverage in a building, and we've seen direct reflections of this, hit the end bottom line and the revenues that a company might be able to bring in, whether it be a warehouse or a logistics center that relies on its customers, to get really good contact with the workforce, and to basically just utilize really good wireless technologies to increase their revenues. When you look at in-building amplification, and we'll go through a couple slides here in a moment, but most companies, most end user, they're either unaware that the solutions exist, or if they are aware, they may be under the impression that the cause and effect to get a really good design, fully integrated, turnkeyed into their facility is beyond their budget. So a lot of it is leveling the playing field, leveling expectations on the front end so that we can solve all the problematic RF issues within the building. Taking a look at a couple of the RF signal prohibitors, as you look at propagation, as you look at like maybe a metro area like pictured here, line of sight issues with the macro towers that the carriers maintain are really 9/10 of the problem. A lot of times, dense tree cover. A lot of the projects that I work on, the customer doesn't complain about poor coverage because it's winter and there's really good line of sight. And then of course the foliage comes in and the deciduous trees come in and fall and block a lot of that. And I tend to get a lot of calls in the beginning of spring with buildings that have been newly constructed. As you look at metro downtown areas, it's really clear to see the line of sight issues with neighboring buildings, as pictured in this photo here. Dense construction materials due to some of the codes that are out there, new fire codes as well. The glass, steel, blocks, and bricks have never been stronger. If you look at some of the recent builds in a lot of the suburban areas, the density really gets involved with poor propagation because you don't tend to have as many macro towers in the suburban or rural area. So you may find your end user complaining about in-building signal, and then we do a study or do a Google Earth of the local carrier towers might be very far away. You also have situations where dense interior walls and furniture schemes get into play. One of the projects I had to turn down in my experience was a ball bearing manufacturer in Indianapolis. And there was just really high ceilings, a lot of metal ball bearings, and it was an RF nightmare to be able to propagate signal through that structure. You also have underground structures and military bases that come into play as well. Wherever you go subterranean, you can guarantee a good 9 times out of 10 you have situations where you will have in-building signal issues. Going on to RF in general, as we look at the particular offerings that we have here at Tessco, you need to keep in mind that radio signals are electromagnetic waves. So they're going to travel freely through the air, but they're also going to get absorbed, they're going to get refracted, and they're going to bounce off different materials. And looking at some of the strict codes that have come out since 9/11, there's a lot more metallic fibers in the glass. The steel is much stronger. And the industry in general, the construction industry, has had sweeping enhancements to a lot of the in-building codes. We'll talk about it in a minute. So let's take a look at the basic in-building components. In-building amplification has been around for quite a while, and the more typical experience that many of you might be familiar with is having a Yagi antenna on the roof and pointed toward the closest macro tower in a good azimuth direction. That actual antenna will capture the signal frequency and the good coverage from the exterior of the building and transfer it through coax cable to the bidirectional amplifier, or BDA, inside the company's telecom closet. That will also go out to a power supply, be properly grounded. You might even have a battery backup system with this amplifier. And then it goes into a series of splitters and combiners to propagate the signal throughout the building through horizontal and vertical coaxial runs to indoor antennas. So a building like this that's 2 stories, you may have 4 or 5 indoor antennas strategically located throughout the building. And Tessco's design team and myself can help you with that as we provide design services for you we'll talk about. So let's get back to basics. Why choose to enhance cellular and public safety amplifier signal in the first place? Well, we've all seen a convergence of need for different reasons. Obviously, there's a business case with greater productivity from your workforce, but more importantly, we have issues where public venues such as stadiums, county courthouses, they rely on their life-saving radios in an incident commanding situation. So the clarity of the signal is paramount. As those different agencies converge on an incident, they need to use their interoperability and the different frequency sets that they communicate with. So giving you an example of some types of the cellular spectrum that we can help enhance here with our Tessco vendor products, we've got cellular 850 megahertz, we've got the PCS 1900, we've also got the new long-term evolution or LTE 700 units that actually enhance the new rebanded frequencies that also allow for additional throughput and much more bandwidth for some of the devices that AT&T and Verizon are actually putting on the marketplace. We also have the AWS 1700 frequencies. As you look at the type of public safety frequencies that Tessco can offer. The original SMR radio, the public safety radio, was on 800 megahertz, but due to Nextel rebanding, a lot of the different municipalities and areas are moving over to 700 megahertz. In the process, they may have a dual band need where they need an amplifier that does both 700 and 800, or they may have an 800 need but be able to enhance the flexibility to bring in some 700 megahertz frequencies as that community grows and rebands. So as we look at the coverage solutions, we need to kind of carefully fit them to the needs of each building. And what I've done pretty effectively in my career and in building is to search the priority areas on a floor plan and work closely with the end user versus the non-essential spaces. It's never strikes to amaze me how many end users actually will start a call off saying, we want wall-to-wall in-building coverage. Well, as you look at the floor plans and look at the janitor spaces, there might be a area that's a public area. It could be a lunchroom where there's a landline phone. You can really work closer into your customer's budget if you take away those non-essential areas. I will also flip the comment over on the public safety. The priority areas might be different. So, for example, for a wireless 10-story building, we may not want to cover the boiler room or some of the areas down in the basement, whereas with public safety, we want to make sure we cover them because that's where a fire might start. So taking a lot of things into account, you can offer your customer a really good design platform. Let's take a look at some of the verticals to target with wireless voice and data. I would say one of the number one verticals that we're seeing a ton of opportunities in is the hospital healthcare industry. Buildings and hospitals, whether they be standalone facilities or in a campus-type environment, they currently have opportunities to put on additional wings, do some remodeling, and although the healthcare industry isn't growing as much as it was when the economy went into the downturn, there's still a great number of hospital healthcare opportunities out there for in-building. I will call your attention to about 5-6 years ago where hospital administrators were under the false impression that amplifiers hurt their noise floor, that the amplifiers that were being placed into the healthcare environment was actually causing a lot of interference. And there's been some case studies done to show that an amplifier actually, when installed properly and FCC permitted, all the right gear is done right with a very good design, you get into a situation where it's helping the noise floor because the devices in the hospitals don't have to power up so high to hit that outdoor macro tower. Therefore, you're winding up with a lot less noise because the units are all at a lower powered positioning. Manufacturing is also a wonderful vertical to interest yourself in with regard to this product business unit, as many of the manufacturing facilities are either metal or block with very few windows, but if you pop the outdoor antenna through with a piece of coax and get to your amplifier, 9 times out of 10, once you break through that skin of the building, you can have really good propagation across a manufacturing facility with very little indoor antennas, thus lowering your cost for the project. Education, K-12 as well as higher education, is also a very, very good vertical. We do a lot with universities here, a lot of community colleges as well, and any type of education facility that needs to have good signal within the building for its students and faculty. Hospitality has been an interesting one, and I've gotten some steam and some forward movement with the Independent Hotel Owners of America, where you may go and find that on the internet by doing the Google search. You can interest hotel owners that might have big chain names such as Holiday Inn Express, Hampton Inn. Some of those projects across the country, some of those hotels are owned independently, and they pay to have the rights to use that big corporate name. So the nice thing about hotels is they're usually going to ask you for a multi-carrier solution, which we offer here at Tessco, and we can work closely with you to do a hotel design that does not break the customer budget. Government and municipalities are also a very good vertical. Many of the government buildings are built pretty strong materials, and sometimes underground facilities at a military base can also be another good location of some customer opportunity. When you look at wireless voice and data, there are some additional verticals to target that you might not have thought of. Architectural companies, as well as property management companies, get questioned a lot when they're talking to end users and prospective tenants as to how the in-building signal is in the building and what they could do to enhance it. Also look at small and medium business enterprises. One of the first projects I got involved with SpotWave was Walmart. And it started out that Walmart wanted to, actually it was a Verizon opportunity, where they wanted to ensure really good coverage to their cellular kiosks at the front of the store. And shortly thereafter, as we started to put together a design for the kiosks, it was holiday time. It was about the time for some movement in around the different floor plans of the Walmarts. They put most of the Verizon kiosks at the back of the store, as you know, where the worst signal is. So we were asked to provide a coverage solution, inexpensive. It was sub $2,000 to these Verizon kiosks. We did about 15 or 20 of them before Walmart's headquarters came back and said, wait a second, if you can do that for a small footprint, what would you think about doing the entire Walmart? And we provided 3 or 4 designs for their A, B, and C format floor plans, and were able to show Walmart that their sales of big-ticket items, like the kids' play gyms and the trampolines and such like that, that's at the back of the store, could sell a lot more because of customers needing to call their loved ones to get permission to make that type of purchase. So we were able to do really well with that. I mentioned military bases already. You can also work in with residential developers. A lot of the multi-million-dollar home building that's kind of slowed down a little bit. A lot of those homes are built pretty densely and have pretty poor signal inside, as well as port authorities and any public facilities. I want to kind of shift your attention now to the type of solutions that we can provide here at Tessco. You can deal with us with an off-the-shelf kitted solution, which would include the outdoor antenna, the indoor antenna, the cabling, all the connectors. We do have vendors that offer us kitted solutions. And we also offer engineered solutions where we would work closely with you to look at the floor plans, to look at the different vendors that could meet the customer's budget. And then choosing the right solution depends pretty much on the different buildings that you're going to be working with. So coverage expectation from customers varies from customer to customer. Some customers do want wall-to-wall. Some customers might want a 70% or a 50% footprint that they can modularly scale as they get more money in the budget with upcoming quarters and upcoming years. A lot of customers nowadays, they do want a modular system, so you might find that a customer wants a multi-carrier solution, but they also want to be able to add LTE in a year time frame, or they may want to add the 700 public safety down the road. So we're very cognizant of that. At Tessco, we can provide you with a design that has plenty of headroom with power and gain from the amplifier to add additional runs and additional coax or fiber optic as the company grows. You also want to look at battery backup and redundant repeater. I worked a project with a company called Roche Pharmaceuticals about 2.5 years ago, and they were the company that won the H1N1 antivirus grant from the federal government. And one of the things that they had to ensure is they went to 24 hours from 8 to 5. They went to 24 hours. They also had to make sure they had very good signal for their workers during that point in time. And we also sold them a redundant repeater so that if the first repeater would fail, battery backup and a new repeater would kick in. We want to talk a little bit about full band repeaters, which I would call off-the-shelf. These units are pretty or less costly, I should say, and they're pretty readily available if you were to do a Google search. But it's very, very important to note that they are not approved for use on networks by Tier 1 carriers. So if not installed properly or if not maintained, they could definitely interfere with the neighboring carriers. I was witness to an event that happened in the New York area about 3 years ago where a gentleman had installed the outdoor amplifier and the indoor antenna within 5 feet of each other in a window at about 32 stories in downtown Manhattan. Of course, nobody knew that he did this, so it took down 2 wireless towers for about a 3-day period of time, costing the company millions of dollars in lost revenue. It took the carrier to triangulate with their engineers a couple days to find out the culprit and ask them to shut the system down. So it's very important that you coordinate with myself and Tessco as you're doing these projects. As you look at band-specific repeaters, those are the ones that I work more on because they only broadcast the desired frequencies that the customer is needing, and you're very likely to gain carrier approval if you share the design with the carrier if asked, as well as making sure there's no interference with the RF environment. Some of our more popular manufacturer partners in this space include Cellular Specialties, who's been in business for about 12, 13 years now. CSI's got great relationships with the carriers. I often lean on them for carrier coordination. They can point out the carrier RF engineer that I should be dealing with on one of your projects to get approval, as well as Mobile Access, which is a distributed antenna system that works through a building. We'll talk a little bit more about Mobile Access in a few slides to come. We also do Andrew Node A, which I'll talk a little bit about. This picture here, third down, is the Andrew Node A 4-chassis subrack, and you can actually slide in individual modules for each carrier. So let's say you started with an Andrew 4-chassis and the customer wanted to do AT&T and Verizon. You would basically sell them a Node A with Andrew. Maybe the first module would be AT&T. The second module would be Verizon, and then you would have 2 dummy modules that are very inexpensive that would slide in port 3 and port 4 to keep dust and debris out of the unit. At a later date and time, your customer could call and buy the Sprint module or maybe the T-Mobile module, and you could literally slide the dummy out and slide the other module, the carrier-specific module, right in. And then down at the bottom here, the company that started it all for me in the in-building arena is Spotwave Wireless. And we have a 50K 2500 XE unit pictured here. The larger unit is the outdoor unit that can go on the roof or inside near a window. That's going to capture your good signal and propagate it through a splitter to the 2 indoor units that you would place where you need the most. We can help you with that. There are some LED chase lights at the bottom of this unit that help guide the installation so that when you're out on the roof you can put it toward the right angle for the particular carrier that you're trying to propagate and enhance. It should be noted that Spotwave is a single carrier solution, so if you would need to do 2 carriers, you'd need 2 Spotwave 2500 XEs. Just a real quick slide to let everybody know that we do offer a full passive component offering here at Tessco. We offer a number of different outdoor antennas and Yagi sticks, as well as the coax and fiber cable, your indoor antennas, as well as battery backup, grounding, and spare amplifier if you need it. We do offer a full design service where we can take a look at your floor plans and come back to you with antenna specifications, the schematic, and everything that you might need for the installation. Let's talk a little bit about DAS systems in general. The entrance of amplifiers about 10, 15 years ago were basically coaxial systems, where it was a passive system using radiating cable or LMR 400, where a Yagi antenna was used on the roof to capture the good signal, bring it inside, and split it into indoor antennas, using some lightning protection, some battery backup. So that's kind of what the industry has seen as commonplace. I would say probably a good majority of the amplifier projects are still very much this way. What we're seeing an increase in are the fiber distributed systems, and these are projects that have multiple buildings on one campus. So there may be some dark strands of fiber already in place, but you're in a situation where the longer cable runs may preclude the use of coax, where if you can use fiber, you can go a lot further. And also, too, it's a more cost-effective solution if you use your fiber to go vertical and then your coax to go horizontally, or maybe use your coax in each building and fiber systems to go from building to building. So that brings up the next subject about a fiber-coax hybrid. This would be a really good solution for a large campus that has a number of buildings, a couple hundred yards away, where they may already have some dark strands of fiber in place, and you'll utilize coax in the building and then fiber to get to from one building to other. We also offer DAS solutions from Mobile Access, as well as Andrew, to utilize that fiber and convert it from optic cable into coax and back again, which is done through the use of an optical master unit, which converts the light to RF and back again. So let's take a look at just a quick case study. This is a case study for a CSI amplifier that we did with a company called GTSI. They were kind of rapidly outgrowing their building facility, and they moved to a new facility in Herndon, Virginia, It came up to about 106,000 square feet. And once they got all moved in, they realized their signal was really poor, and 700 folks every week could not make calls inside the building or get their data. So we found the culprit was, customized solution set required because of some interfering channels in the area. So we worked closely with CSI and the integrator on this project and utilized the digital technology from CSI, the DSP technology, to capture and filter all the needed signal that the amplifier needed and solve this problem. It was a really good project, turned out to be a really good project for Tessco, CSI, and the integrator. Just a quick comment about mobile access units. Without doing a deeper dive, we do have mobile access webinar that I can put together for you. But this is the Mobile Access 2000, and this is a really good example of a multi-service piece of equipment that your CSI amplifier, your other amplifier can work toward. And what the Mobile Access 2000 does is allows you to offer your customer a multi-service solution for, let's say, a high-rise building, utilizing broadband architecture so that you could run multitudes of different frequencies through this, and then you would use an amplifier or remote unit that would go into the system that would be carrier-specific. For example, if you had AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon to do, you would utilize the Mobile Access 2000 and then 3 separate amplifiers from CSI to make sure that you have a very protective environment. You're not going to cause any interference on the carrier's macro tower. And we'll talk a little bit more about mobile access here in a moment. We also have the new unit by Mobile Access called the VE. And this unit takes advantage of the existing Cat5 Ethernet in a building. So if you guys are dealing with any type of end users that have an older building, making the new cable runs either impossible or very difficult, you can utilize this controller and the pod that's pictured in the lower right corner to propagate signal for various services. So you can do, currently with the Mobile Access VE, you can do a Wi-Fi enhancement as well as one wireless carrier. Pretty soon Mobile Access will have the 2.0 version of this unit, so you'll be able to do 2 wireless carriers and 1 Wi-Fi network. And what's nice is it transparently coexists along with the customer's LAN signal, so you don't need to run a bunch of new cabling. One of the more recent projects that Mobile Access did with this was the Las Vegas Hilton, in which they put about 315 pods into the Las Vegas Hilton without turning any services down and utilizing the existing LAN. It's kind of a nice solution set. I want to kind of shift gears a little bit to public safety at the moment. So it represents a very good growing portion of in-building amplification. You don't tend to have some of the needs for carrier approval. So as long as you're utilizing FCC gear that we sell here at Tessco, you can do an amplifier system for a public safety frequency, whether it be 800 megahertz, which would be all your first responders. It could be UHF or VHF, and could even be some of the new rebanded 700 megahertz frequencies. Everything that I mentioned previously is still in effect here, and we work to help you with your designs for the public safety amplifiers in similar fashion, where we look at the floor plans and assist you with antenna location and placement. Some of the verticals are a bit different than the wireless space. Metropolitan buildings, I would say, are probably the main concern, since safety and liability has kind of been top of mind. Courthouses as well as hospitals, and changes up a little bit as you look through these bullet points, FEMA, Department of Defense, and some of your first responders, some of your command and control people that only get involved when incidents happen. I'll also talk a little bit about the positive elements. We already mentioned that there's no carrier approval, but one of the things that's really driving the need for public safety amplifiers is your mandates and ordinances. When I was at SpotWave about 4 years ago, the city of Tempe, Arizona wrote an ordinance into their code that they were not going to let any public facility get a certificate of occupancy unless it met with neg 95 dBm signal in 90% of the building. So obviously that created a lot of need for them in the city. There was 80 PDAs that the public works were trying to open into new buildings and had to get the enhanced solution from me before they can actually get their certificate of occupancy. Some of the other issues with public safety amplifiers, as we've seen, we're all watching the news, is the consistency of communications that's so desperately needed when an incident does happen. One of the projects I worked on, one of my former employers did a amplifier for the National Holocaust Museum. I don't know if you guys on the call remember, but about 3 years ago there was a shooting which unfortunately killed the guard at the entrance to the museum. Prior to that shooting, we had put in one of our integrators had put in a full turnkey amplifier solution for multi-carrier as well as public safety. And I think about 6 agencies arrived on site that day for interoperability to be able to communicate through the building. And prior to the installation of that amplifier, there was no signal, completely dark building within about 10 feet of the entrance door. So that's kind of a good project. I hate to see that the guard was killed, but unfortunately, that was something that occurred that day. Talk a little bit about the 9/11 disaster. I mean, that was a complete in-building lack of communication that day. The LAN system went down first. Then a lot of the neighboring people that were watching the incident started to utilize their cell phones, and there was capacity issues. A lot of the area towers went down, and then, of course, the public safety frequencies and some of the radio towers went down as well. It was very hard to communicate that day. Take a look at some frequently asked questions to qualify. We talked a little bit about some of the design considerations. We always want to ask the customer about the total square footage that they're looking to enhance, and will a modular offering be a good situation for them. Which wireless carriers to enhance are also very important. What kind of battery backup, and if they need remote monitoring. A lot of the projects that are very high use spaces for AT&T and Verizon, they may call for a modem driven amplifier that they can tie into their network operations center or NOC, so that they can monitor it in case they need to see if there's any interference coming from the amplifier. As I mentioned a couple times on this call, Tessco engineers are standing by to help us. We do have 2 engineers that are fully trained in in-building amplification that can help you and I with the floor plan analysis. Some of the questions that we need to ask from you are made readily available at this link here, www.tessco.com/go/in-building, and that is the Tessco design request form. There's instructions there for attaching your floor plans, as well as how you can put your cell phone into engineering mode to capture the RSSI, which is the received signal strength indicator. And we usually, not usually, all the time need to know what that RSSI level is at the roof so that we can do our link budget and do our design for you. We need to capture that signal from you per carrier so that we can build the design. You always want to try to provide the floor plans and the RSSI and the worksheet all at the same time, just so we can track it. You can always copy me on those items as well. Coming up to one of the final slides here, some of the next steps that you can do is obviously talk to your Tessco account manager about upcoming in-building webinars. You can begin prospecting and taking a look at the different verticals that might match your business model, as well as deciding what verticals and geographic area is. With the economy slowdown, I do have some in-building amplifiers, let's say in California, that are taking projects in New Jersey and New York due to the downturn. I would always caution folks on doing that because you tend to spread yourself out a little too thin. And if you need to go back or do any type of enhancement later on, it's kind of hard to travel across the country like for a project. So many of my more successful integrators work on a tri-state area or maybe a 4-hour radius from their shops. You also want to develop a referral program that rewards your past customer as well as your current customer. And as you scale and achieve some success, we suggest you look at purchasing IBWave software. IBWave is a heat mapping software company that allows you to plot all your walls for the building, merge in your floor plans, and do a analysis of coverage, be able to go back to your end user with a before and after floor shot of what the signal is going to be with the in-building amplifier before and after the solution. And just some summary items here. You want to socialize the concept among your team that you have the capabilities. We also, one of the key points I think to be successful is to make sure you're kind of leveling expectations with your customer. A lot of times I see a customer that might only have an $8,000 allocated budget, but as I take a look at the beginnings of the project, it looks like a multi-carrier solution would be $20,000 or more. So we always try to level expectations up front And this is something I started about 5 years ago to go into customers that wanted wall-to-wall and turnkey to offer them a 70% build where they can scale it. A lot of times when they see the full cost, it is within their budget, but sometimes it's not. And if it isn't, and they see someone who's actually been thoughtful of providing a scaled opportunity for modularity, I think that you gain a lot of respect, and 9 times out of 10 you'll actually win the project as well. And we offer you a good, better, best solution. So if you come to us with a $20,000 budget for a large building that we quote you at $35,000, one of the things we'll do is we'll always offer a backup vendor or a backup solution that meets the customer's budget. In conclusion here today, I just want to let you know this is just the start of our webinar series. If you would like to find out more information on SpotWave, I do those webinars myself. I just ask that you give me about 3 days prior notice. Would be very willing to jump on a call and put together the SpotWave slide deck. It's about 20 minutes, and you are also very willing to invite your end users as well. Cellular Specialties, which I would say is the number one wireless voice and data friendly to the carrier amplifier company, is also very good about doing monthly webinars. They do not allow Tessco to sell the DSP webinar unless you've been through, the DSP unit, unless you've been through the DSP certification webinar. It's about a 35-minute webinar, and they do keep track on who's been through that. The next item is actually coming up, and I have those dates that I can present to you. This slide is a little old, but there's one coming up on the 15th. So I will send a reminder to those of you on this call who would like to join that. We also offer the Mobile Access Partner Portal webinar, which goes over all the offers from Mobile Access as well. Wanted to kind of post the contact details for myself. We are headquartered in Hunt Valley, Maryland, with an office in Reno as well. And we encourage any questions at this point. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone. It'll take me about 10 seconds to do that. Bear with me 1 second. We'll see if anybody has questions today. I really appreciate your time on the call and look forward to further helping you. All right, I believe I have everybody unmuted. And I've got 2:37, so I apologize for running over a little bit. Does anybody have any questions?
Kevin?
Yes.
I have a question in regard to improving what I know of as fire ground frequencies, which are simplex frequencies.
Uh-huh.
I do have that request regularly from my municipalities in my area. I personally have no idea how you would enhance simplex frequencies.
Yeah, I have had that come up. I've had to come up a lot. I remember there was a courthouse in Bangor, Maine, and they had the same issue. They wanted us to do a simplex actually 2 simplex frequencies, and we came up empty-handed on that one.
Okay, then I'm not alone. I thought maybe
you're not alone.
Out there that I'm missing. So I appreciate.
Yeah, the problem with and I don't think this is a problem. It's actually an opportunity for all of us. Is that as you see more units that are being manufactured, we've just recently announced a public safety amplifier that's 700, 800, yes, full open dual band by a company called Advanced RF. You might know them as ADRF. We just have that one particular SKU to offer, but it's in a NEMA 4 red box, and it's the only amplifier to date that meets all of the fire codes, pretty much up to date. And if you would be interested, I can send you that. But the simplex, I continue to come up empty on that one.
Okay. Again, I appreciate your feedback.
No problem. Does anyone else have any questions? I think I've got almost everybody's phone line open right now, so you should just be able to. I got one still muted. Gabrielle, I'll unmute you. Gabriel. I basically want to make comment. I had a couple people still muted. I basically wanted to make comment over the fact of how we support you at Tessco. Everybody should have an account manager. You should also have a market development manager assigned to you. So you do have 2 resources. You can always reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help you. As you look to identify opportunities, one of the things that I kind of enjoyed the most about my history here in building space was literally working for amplifier vendors that never gave me any leads, thus forcing me to go out and kind of introduce myself to the end users and be able to warm up an opportunity and close it. So I'm really good with that. I would be more than happy to assist you with any introductory calls to your end users. I also have a couple things that will be emailed to you after this call. There is a public safety checklist of some questions you could be asking your end users, as well as a couple of webinars that are upcoming. You'll get that from me as well. And please reach out to me if you'd like a copy of this presentation today. We can always take the Tessco branding off of it and allow you to use it for your prospecting as well. One last thing I'll leave you with, I'll send everybody on this call the LEED certification website. And this LEED, if you're unfamiliar with LEED buildings, this is the Green Building Council. A lot of the new green building codes that are written, people actually get certified so that their green building, actually gets registered with the federal government as a green building. And 95% of the green buildings that get certified that you will see by county on the link I'm going to send you, you can reach out to these folks because 95% of them do have serious enhancement issues in building. So you can reach out for not only public safety but also wireless voice and data and talk to your IT or telecom directors and see if they have in-building needs. With that, I'll ask if anybody has any other questions. Please reach out to me if you have any questions you determine or come up with after this call today. Thank you guys for your time. Make it a great week, and let me know if you need anything.